we are. Session
Hey,
4. Hello, hello.
hey, hey.
Um, so yeah, it's been much briefer. It wasn't the 7 6 7 months that we thought it might be.
No, no,
Uh,
not even 6 or 7 days.
not even 6 or 7 days. Yeah,
Uh,
it's less than a week, so that's exciting. And so how has this time been for you? Your reflection on nouns and all things nounish?
it's been good. A sad day. Queen Elizabeth died today. If you're wondering what day it is, and she was a big noun supporter. And
She
no,
was.
um, but yeah, it's good. I felt really good coming out of our last conversation. Sitting down and kind of making a little skeleton outline of where we're at and what we have. I remained in a feeling good about it. It did shine some lights on some places where um, we could flesh some things out a little bit. I think
Yep.
that we are badly in need of a B story um, of some sort, potentially romantic B plot. That's something I float in my outline. Um, but I feel like we had some good starts to things. You've shared some Google Docs with me. Let me just like pull all these up so that
Yeah.
I've got everything.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to get everything out that I thought we talked about. And I also found some looming holes that in my understanding of what we're doing that was really helpful. So I mean, I'm happy to go look over everything that we've done. I'm also very happy to just kind of continue the process and maybe ask some questions at this point and be like, but anyway, whatever works best.
Okay,
Because
yeah, no, no, for sure.
like for
Um,
me, what I realize is, we've talked a lot about our kind of human character, but we haven't really gotten too deep into like the nouns and their powers and all this
for
things,
sure.
which I feel obvious. I mean, I think we understand what the ethos behind the nouns, like it's all about decentralization. It's all about not owning ideas, but like in terms of like what are their do they have magic powers? Where do they exist? Where does
Yes,
our reality and the reality of this world like separate? Like, are they
right.
owned by you know degens in the crypto space? Does the treasury exist? Is there a DAO? Like all these things, which I just
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Beyond that, I was even, and I don't get into this exactly in my outline. Maybe I touch on it a little bit, but I was curious about like sense of like how many are there? What are their
Mhm.
personalities like? Do they have a leader that's who's doing the prime? Who's the prime? Who's his like? Does he have one noun that he's mostly talking to? Is he talking to a bunch of different nouns? When he meets them, does he meet one of them? Does he meet a group of them? What differentiates them? Like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff was coming up for me. I was like something that like sometimes it can be useful to be like, well, what are the scenes, and can we go back from there? Like what needs to happen. So then, what are the rules? I was like, a romantic B plot wouldn't hate it in this movie where we've got this guy who's talking to imaginary creatures. It feels like a natural thing that could intersect with that story in a comedic or interesting way. Um, and I had this thought of like a Cyrano type scene with a noun is very funny to me and is like something that's maybe potentially unique to our idea here to do it that way. And then I was specifically like, when I was thinking about that, I was like, well, then don't you want like an especially appropriate noun for that? Like he's the very, very wrong version is he's a heart, has a heart for a head.
Right.
Um, but
Yeah.
I don't know what that would.
The one that came to mind was like the red shoe. That's more like sexy than like love.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
yeah, but I think that's a great idea. I think I mean, I had thoughts of like, do the nouns speak? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you obviously you work in the realm of minions, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but anyway, I just did.
It's fine. The
Yeah.
well, the thing about them is, and this is they they do communicate,
Right.
and they communicate pretty effectively, and one of the sort of rules with them is you are supposed to have a sense. You're not supposed to be totally lost as to what they're doing or what they're trying to say, even though
Right.
it's sort of gibberishy nonsense. Um, I've gotten some pushback internally writing documents and referring to it as nonsense, and I was just trying to quickly get an idea out in my defense, but then it was like, oh no, it's not nonsense. It has to be there should be sense to it, and I was
Yeah.
like, no, I understand.
There's some
I
sense.
just
Right. No, it's just, but
right,
it's not your like
but it's
uh
not English words in
articulated.
complete
Yeah.
sentences articulated.
Right.
But they aren't silent. They're not mute. They're
Right.
not and there is, I think, a slight distinction, and also like whether they succeed or not on this, it is like you as the audience, and then also a lot of characters in those films generally understand what they're saying and trying to do,
Right.
versus like they are, you don't know what's going on with them, you're confused by it, they have their own thing going on, and you're just sort of like, I don't know. um and I feel like I my instinct is that the nouns should talk,
Okay.
just because like we have kind of been talking about these nouns as sort of having a sort of as far as how they interact with this guy's life, having a little bit of a Rumpelstiltskin, Great Gazoo type of a relationship with him, and it feels a little bit like adding in, and also they can't speak. Like then it starts to be like, what? Whoa, this is going to be a lot to like
Yeah, no, I mean,
communicate.
I I I think that they definitely have to communicate. I just was wondering if it was like they communicated through language. And again, I don't have I just explain the options because I've not heard, obviously, that we haven't heard a noun speak.
No.
So it's like, what are the when what option I envisioned was like, that doesn't make sense, but they speak through like emojis or text bubbles or
Hmm.
some other digital form. Anyway, but I as I say it out loud, I'm less inclined to go with that. But I do think we got like I think there has to be something unique about
There's
the way that they
definitely
communicate.
something, yes, and I think there's definitely something to be said for like how is their communication going to be unique in the way that other parts of them are unique, and it feels like there's certainly a version where their communication isn't unique at all that feels like very bizarre.
Right.
Where
Just
they,
just very casual
yeah,
talking. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I watched just a side
Mhm.
thing, not to be too super critical of someone else's thing, but I was watching the new A League of Their Own with my
Mhm.
wife. It's an
Mhm.
Amazon series based on the movie. And it was unclear to me if this was an intentional choice or not, because it's only like 5% of the dialogue, but about 5% of the dialogue is just completely anachronistic things no one would say in that period, specifically like the women. Just saying like things, talking like how people talk on the internet is how I would put it.
Right.
And but it's not like all the time, and it's not
So weird.
all the characters, and I'm very confused. I could not get a clear read from watching it if this is an intentional choice, which is fine in that way, or if this is like just like this people making this show didn't think about this element of it.
Yeah.
um all that to say, there were times when it was like a little jarring, that they were just sort of talking in a very normal 2022 way about certain aspects of their world while not talking that way in other parts of it.
So
Um,
random.
it was weird, and if it had been maybe a little bolder and more in that direction and felt like a stronger choice, I think it could have worked for me. But as it was, it felt
Right.
a little bit like, I didn't watch every episode, so I who knows, but it felt
Right.
a little bit like it made me like it, it removed me from the
Right. It's like
thing,
takes
and
you out of the experience, and you're like, is this intentional? Is this
yeah.
yeah. So
And but so anyway, I certainly don't want us to land in that zone, in the like
no,
uh
right.
it,
Every third
yeah.
noun speaks
But I'd even just like,
pig
I don't
Latin.
know that the nouns should just talk like a guy like the guys at his work talk. in
Right.
the exact same way. That
No,
seems
no.
wrong to me.
It feels like, I mean,
Um,
it's gotta have some sort of connection to, whatever information technologies or crypto, or I feel like it's got, it has some sort of digital element. I
yeah,
mean,
I,
whether it like emerges out of some sort of like digital chaos, I don't know, like digital noise, and I don't know. I mean, one
sure,
thought I
sure,
had
sure.
when I was thinking about like the thought bubble, or like the text bubble, it's like it comes like out of like numbers. It like kind of, like those, like the board of a train station,
Hmm,
and then
hmm.
like the words appear. But that's stupid too. So it's just, but like that kind of, no, I don't know. Like I mean, I just want to. I think the point is, like, as we discussed, I'd like to find something different and fun that relates to how does their communication relate to where they come from and who they are.
Yeah. Again, the like my gut instinct on the specifically on the emoji thing was that feels like not quite right. That being said, it's like that with that as an example, I kind of understand the ballpark of what you're talking about in a way that I think it's a very helpful reference point to say something like that. And it could be that we come back to that, and that's great, and we decide we love that. But I also like just had a funny thought. Just again, if just for because I go to what's
Hmm.
comedic about something, like you know, trying to communicate verbally with a creature that only speaks in emojis is very funny because you're having to say the emojis
Right. Right. Yeah.
um, and
Yeah.
string them together out loud, which is not generally how people use those. But I feel like you can understand, like I, obviously people understand what they mean when you lay them out over text, and I think you could follow enough that it would be funny if there was a dialogue scene that way. Um, but anyway,
To go
so
back to
there you go.
sorry,
Go ahead.
no, well, to go back to your idea about like the romance. I mean, the one thought I had there is we talked about him having like a coworker who doesn't believe him, and
Hmm.
uh, but again, the other thing, I wasn't, we haven't really said this, made this decision, but our protagonist could also be a young woman if we were
Sure.
interested in going that route. But either way, the character, the protagonist, that could be their love interest, someone who is, skeptical of what they're going through, and maybe even have some sort of competitive relationship at work, um, but ultimately, they, yeah, they have that, which I like that. I like that.
I just really quickly to address the gender of the protagonist. I'm more than open to it being a female protagonist, but I will say, like, the fact of the matter is, it's a male-dominated space.
Yeah.
It's a male, uh, you know, there's I would say, the nouns themselves, while relatively non-gendered, if they had to, they were they're kind of
They're
non-gendered
leading in a direction,
in
right?
a way.
Yeah.
Um, and we're two men. And so I think that there's some honesty in
Yeah. I mean,
saying
also the spaces, as you say, like, yeah, the people who are going to be interested
protagonist
in
character,
this.
which isn't to say that the female characters in the film will get shortchanged in any way and won't be important, but I just like I feel we'd be going out of our way.
Yeah, it'd be a little. Yeah, I agree. I'm 100% on board with all of that, and I think for now we can just assume that that's going to be the case, unless a convincing reason
And
to
there,
do it
yes, and I think that's something that we could come across from doing it, and also that's a thing where obviously those that informs a character a lot, but we're still early, and we could get to a place where actually this might work better that way, and it's you just change some things around at that point. So, but I think that, like, let's think about this as a male protagonist for the time being.
Yeah,
Um, and obviously it could be a non-binary protagonist, or it could be all sorts of things. But it for now, I think we'll treat it as that, as and see how that develops. But yeah, I the like non US element of it as has felt like I've left this conversation feeling very strongly about that is helps with the like it helps. I think it puts things in the direction of what we're already trying to say and do with this, and it feels like it leans into what is um special and different about these. And while I do feel that like the nouns strike me as a little bit default male, they don't strike me as like default any sort of nationality or race, or they feel very like diverse in that way. um
Do
and
you
so
have instinct on where our protagonist should be from?
um you know, I don't immediately. I think that I excuse me, I noticed in your document you talked about India, but also mentioned Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok. Um, and I think like very briefly talked about um, South and Central America last call, just as we were discussing places. And I think that like um, I think there's a lot of valid reasons to choose any one of those. I think the um, the instinct to uh, go, you know, in the like Asia, India area that you seem to be kind of
Attracted to?
attracted to does feel like it feels it makes a lot of sense. It seems natural. It doesn't feel like you know, it's like really like, you know, there's always a danger of these things if you get like way too specific. And you know, and it's like wait, like he's from Uruguay, and it's like, oh, all right, I mean he can be, but like
Right.
is there like is there a connection between the nouns? And no, we just thought Uruguay could be a good
Obviously, you're
versus
right.
he's from a place where 1 billion people live. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's all
Yeah.
right.
I mean, I feel like that India for me, kind of for that reason alone, just feels right. And the other thing about India that I think is exciting is that they speak English there, and
Huh?
so that is, I think, going to be helpful
Yeah.
in the telling of our story.
Yes.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, and and I'm also, I think visually it's a very kind of stunning place. Also from a production standpoint, it's not the most expensive place to film,
No,
and
and
you can,
there's infrastructure for
yeah,
filming, and so on
yeah,
and so forth.
and you
Totally.
can have a kick-ass Bollywood number, like dance number, and with the nouns. What else do you want, really?
Yeah, sure. Um, that sound well. Let's get that in there. Um, I can picture it already. You got people and nouns, and they're all dancing. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's so. I again, that was like your instinct here. I think we should run with that for a minute. I also like got very far along on a project set in India, and then it completely fell apart due to a rights situation.
Mhm.
So I'm like ready to go.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. You're well versed.
I've been there. I almost wrote a movie set there. Uh,
We shot part of the feature most recent feature that I wrote was set there. I mean, just like a couple scenes, but we did do production there. And I've been there, and so it's another, yeah, good reasons to for now. Let's just put a pin in that, and we'll see.
Great. All right. I think
So
that's
I haven't had a chance to look at your document. I don't know if we want to do that now, or you want to maybe tell me if there's like things in there that you got excited about that we haven't talked about.
yeah. So
Uh,
the biggest things that like I just kind of like broke out the act structure and said like where are certain things going, what's happening here.
Yeah.
And like I think a big thing that we are missing coming out of our last discussion, and not in a bad way, but I think you might have touched on this too. I know you were like, "What's our guy's name?" But it obviously, but also like, what at the start of this movie is his goal? What does he think that he wants in his life? That you know, it's probably going to be something that he's going to change his mind about, if you've ever seen how a movie works. But like, I don't really know what it is. I think that we've been talking about this sort of inciting incident involving the company he's working for being acquired, or a new job offer, or something like that. And it feels like whatever it is he is seeking, it seems natural that he's going along with this change because he thinks that's going to help him get what his thing is. And so if it's, if he's like a status obsessed guy who's trying to get a better life, it's like he thinks this new job is like, now it's a bigger company, there's going to be more money, there's going to be more opportunity, this is a good thing, I'm excited about this, an opportunity, I'm gonna, and if it's, again, these are like, I'm not necessarily pitching that it's any of these things. It's like he's a lonely guy and he really wants to meet someone and he's looking for a girlfriend or a best friend or whatever. It's like this new company comes along and there's a girl he likes there, or everyone seems like they have a lot of fun and they're very social there, or what, it's like there's something that feels like it's gonna be, this going through this is gonna help me with the thing that I want. And so it feels like those two things should kind of touch on each other a little bit.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I think, this sense of this is a very exciting time. I mean, one thought is that, whoever the villain is, the villainous entity, person, avatar, corporation, like that's like his dream. Like he aspires, like at the beginning, he aspires to, this is the best thing that could possibly ever happen to him. He gets to work for this company. This guy who's built this, empire, is self-made, human, is again like self-made man. Like the that is what he aspires to. This is his dream. So
I think it should dovetail with his dream in that way. I don't know that it should be like
right in the nose.
It's like, it's like, and again, I'm not saying this is the guy or anything like this. I'm just using this for an example. But like, we start the story and there's this guy and he drives a Tesla and he loves Elon Musk, and then he finds out Elon Musk is buying the company he works for. Like, I don't want to be like ahead of it, and it's like,
no,
that guy.
Right.
But in the like ballpark of the kind of a thing he aspires to be, and like, oh yeah, this guy is one of those types of people. Right. Yeah.
He loves Elon Musk, but it ends up being Jeff Bezos. I'm not saying that.
He has to take Blue Origin instead of SpaceX, but he still gets to space.
Right.
I totally agree. Should also build rockets, is the point. Exactly. That's everyone's hobby these days. Everyone who's anyone.
Yeah.
I got to do more rocket building if I want to.
I have mine. Actually, it's just in the closet back here, so I'm gonna bust it out after we have a session. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's not like, oh my gosh, this guy's my hero. Oh my gosh, my hero just bought this company. It's this is an icon in that world, and I'm so excited to be a part of his organization so that I can emulate what he's done and create my own empire. And he's going to show me how to do this, or I'm gonna rise through the ranks and become like him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And of course, so whatever philosophy, worldview this villain is articulating, he's on board with that at the beginning. Yeah, that makes sense.
So then I think that, like, in this first act, we're kind of want to meet this guy, learn a little bit about his world, what he wants, what his surroundings are, before we like get into this sort of, okay, this is something's disrupting things here with there's this new job offer or merger or whatever it is. And I think that to me, it feels natural that that's the point where, like, you know, assuming we're sticking with the like version of like nouns in this world are sort of like what they are in the real world, which is to say there's some sort of NFT project or something like that, that they have a connection to that actual space rather than just they just are a totally separate thing, and it happens to be that there's an NFT project about them, and then there's also this movie that's about these characters. If we're going in that direction, I think here at the top is now like where we need to sort of like bring the general audience on board with what this is going on at all. Does that make sense? Like, this is where the like info dump about NFTs and nouns and whatever goes in a very invisibly executed way, but like
He's a cake.
this is sort of, I think it's like we found out about the guy, we kind of have we're a little bit, it's like now we got to kind of just sort of lay out what is going to happen. Presumably if we're going this direction, you want things to connect, so it's like this other guy's company must have to do something with that space or that stuff.
Yeah.
And or the flip side, they want nothing to do with it and the guy's current thing is that. But like either way, it feels like there should be like that should be involved in this evolution of things, and that's sort of how we're getting to this place and getting this out. And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
go ahead.
sorry. No, I mean,
No.
I feel like maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about the pros and cons. To what extent nouns, how they exist in our reality, exist in this reality? I mean, and where is it just whole hog? Like, you know, the nouns were created by a group of NFT experts who wanted to try something different, and so they created these nouns that are CC0, and they're, you know, one a day is released, and they wrote the code and they created the design, and then people, every day people auction them, and now we've got as many as we do. Like, it's literally like,
So
yeah.
so
Or is it, yeah.
I'm not opposed to, as a starting point, that being the situation. And also, like, I'm not opposed to like making the choice of like they are what they are, you know what I mean? Like that being said, like I don't want this to feel like it's a commercial for the nouns. And that's the sort of risk of leaning too heavily into like they are what they are. And like, even if they are what they are, there's a version of like never getting into the auction. Like, it happens. Yeah. That is how people get them in this world. But like, it just never gets discussed in the movie just because it doesn't come up. Like, I'm not saying this is not a specific choice I'm making or like an actual.
No, I get it. I get
about them, but I'm just like, I'm saying like, I don't feel beholden if we choose to make them like the real thing. That means that everything that's true about them needs to be covered by this movie and needs to be, that. And in the same vein, I think there's a version where they're very similar in this movie to how they are in the real world, but this is like a really simple version of a slight change. The movie's set in 2023, and the project just is starting when the movie starts.
Right.
Like, that's obviously not the real world, but right. Is that, that's not fundamentally changing it entirely. That's just sort of changing the conditions under which it starts. And so again, like something like that, I think is like totally on the table as a version of it being what it is. I think we should be flexible with that if we go that route, because I think we don't want the cart leading the horse in that version.
Sure.
Where,
yeah, we have to, like, oh my gosh, we have to build everything around the fact that they started in 2021, and
right.
now
Yeah,
the story
again,
has to be set then, and then it's like, well, but there's other elements of crypto didn't. Yeah.
again, I'm not specifically calling out either of these two details
No.
as things that are, but just like the sum total of every single detail, I think starts to weigh you down potentially.
So
Go
that
ahead.
then that brings up the question: are you opposed to a version where none of that is how it is, so that these characters literally are,
So
have emerged from the blockchain or emerged from the web, whatever we say, and they have like no connection to real world?
that, yes. So the like I I get, so there's like they're literally what they are on one end.
Yeah.
And then there's like they don't have anything to do with any of this stuff
Yeah.
at all.
They're
On
just
the other end.
the
It's, you know,
DMTLs that have emerged from the.
and they just happen to look this way, and there's
Yeah.
nothing, there's no connection to technology, there's no connection to
Well,
metaverse. I'm just saying all the way on the other
Oh,
end
I see.
of
Okay.
the
All the way.
spectrum
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Right.
is like
Right.
just, this is a completely like the property may as well not exist. It's its own thing here. They look like this. They're called nouns. That's it.
That's it.
That's all we're taking from that. The
I mean, it might
you
not
know,
even be called nouns. I mean, that might
sure,
be
exactly.
like that's the name that our guy gives
Right.
them. Yeah.
And so that's like all the way on the other end.
Right.
And I do get nervous, like, and it could be fine, but I get nervous putting the flag like right exactly in the middle, where we're like heavy into talking about metaverses and NFTs and all of that. And like, but the nouns, we don't acknowledge that there's any connection there. And like the really confusing version of that is like we bring in a bunch of actual real other NFT projects and acknowledge their NFTs and acknowledge sort of that they're real, and not except not
Not this one's to
carve
yeah.
out.
No, I think that's a good point.
And so like so it's like I do feel like if we are really interested in like name checking technology and like getting into that and think that's like a fun thing to do with this project, then I think we might want to lean more into, you know,
the reality.
The reality. Now again, like we're pitching a version of reality where that there's an immediately like fantastical diversion from reality.
Right.
And I think that's good. And I think that like grounding them in almost a real thing can be helpful in that way. It's that sort of sense that there's sort of, you know, that in our real world is there magic just around the corner, you know, just out of sight. The sort of making the mundane fantastical.
Yeah.
I think that there's an appeal there with that.
You've convinced me, because my instinct was probably not that, but I think just from this conversation I can see the opportunities and the possibilities and the fun you can have with that as well. And like, you know, getting into the mythology of nouns a little bit in a interesting way. I mean, you know, the creator is anonymous person, and that in of itself is fascinating, and like no one knows. And
right. Sure. And so it's like we can have our fantastical answer to that potentially, or we can have a very grounded answer to that, or like, you know, there's a lot of options there, and there's some fun to be had there.
I do feel like, and maybe this is again just kind of vision lock on this, but I do feel like it going that route may age up our story a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not that, yes, but also like
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Just,
you know, I don't know that we're writing something that's like, gee, so it has to be that simple.
yeah.
You know, I like it adds a little bit of a layer, I think, of a little bit of complexity, but hopefully that like largely blends into just sort of blends in and feels natural, and it's just kind of a like an intangible thing where it feels that way, and it's also sort of a fun surrounding the idea of the project.
Yeah.
That is that sense that there's a real thing out there, and this is sort of about it, but sort of not in a fun way.
Yeah. No, I like it. Cool. And do you have a like an instinct on like what kind of powers these nouns have? That do they have powers? I mean, like, is it just that? I mean, I have no idea. Like, I think he could go from a huge range, right? Like from like being able to manipulate data in the digital space, kind of like magic, to all they do is they can actually communicate, and they can maybe
So
see things.
so yeah, so I think that pretty fundamental to the story we talked about last week is that they need this guy's help.
Right.
And that says to me that, at least at the start of this, they do not have a ton of agency in the physical human world.
Yeah,
Like,
I that makes sense to me. I feel like I'm very, yeah, as you say, at least at the start, like I'm very happy with their whole existence and agency being in the digital space. Like
yeah,
that's, yeah,
sure. And but we talked
yeah,
about, and I don't think this is at all off the table, but like, is there a third act where the digital is spilling over into the real? And I think that's really compelling and good, but I just don't want to start them there.
right, right, right.
Um, and like, because there's like a version where, you know, he is in the, and again, some of this stuff, depending on how we limit these things and what the extent of what they can do is, but there's a version of like he goes to the ATM and the little noun that he'd been talking to pops up on it and money starts shooting out.
Right.
And so like I think that like if there's just one or two things like that, that's maybe good and fine, but it's like I don't want the sense that they just have like all this power over our world and don't need him at all. And so like certainly not the weird science version where they are just somehow they're literal genies somehow, because if you put enough computer together you get a literal genie.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, they
uh
can't wish fulfill their fantasies in the real world. Oh, what's going on?
Sorry, one second. So cool. So I've got about 15 minutes
Yeah.
and then I've got to run. I just have
Well,
tightly scheduled today.
I think we should. I think. I mean, if there's other stuff you want to talk about, I'm down for it. But I feel like spending our time talking about the nouns and what they are and what they aren't for the next 15 minutes is probably for me the most useful. Just because I think that's, after all, that's our reason for
Sure.
being here. And
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. I mean, in terms of I would agree. Like I feel like they have some abilities in the digital space, in the um, world of whatever, whether it's metaverses or like they can pop up, they can move between. I don't know how freely they can move, but I feel like they have access to places that most people would
Yeah.
not have access to. Like that to me feels like it makes sense. Um, but beyond that, I'm not sure, and I don't know how they're differentiated based on the different head and their different shirt. And like is there do they have abilities that relate to the what the noun that they are, and also like do they share a one thought I had was maybe they share a consciousness like the Borg, and like once one experiences anything they all
It's
do.
interesting.
um
I think that it's interesting to like that's sort of touching on the like what is, because this was a question I had, like, because what is his relationship with each of the nouns? I kind of was saying, but like, what is the noun's relationship with another noun in this story? Like, like how did like are they in agreement? Are they disagreeing? Like, do they get along? Do they fight a lot? Like what like how are they internally like also like, so we talked very roughly, obviously, but about like, okay, there's this noun and he's communicating with one or more nouns are human and they want his help. He's going to help them. Is that something all the nouns are on board with? Is that this one noun's plan? Is this a small group of nouns? Is it like, you know, in
Mhm.
Superman when his father tells everyone on Krypton like the world is going to explode and they don't believe him, and they dismiss that, and that's why he sends Superman to Earth in his little ship. It's like there's a rift between the everyone and then this one now. I don't know. Like I'm not sure. I do feel more strongly that the specific nouns should have uh, there should be a sort of meaningful usage of whatever their characteristic is. Um,
Yeah.
as simple as the like thing I pitched, where the one that has a sort of a sexy thing or a
Yeah.
heart thing, he's
Romantic.
better at romancing and he
Yeah.
has good lines, and it's like that's not it's not the most uh huge thing that he can do, but or
No,
is it? But it's like but it's specific to
it's
him, and
relevant.
um
Yeah, I
and
mean,
so
otherwise they're all just going to be the same. Like, I mean,
yeah.
and I think like I totally agree. Like they have and I think their whatever their thing is should relate to their head, what their head is.
Yeah.
Um, that yeah, I totally agree with that. And I mean, in terms of they all like, I mean, having different perspectives or different politics, like the nouns kind of being able to be in conflict with each other, uh, to get along with each other, to have relationships, independent relationships with each other. I'm not sure. I mean, again, I think my initial instinct, but it could easily be dissuaded from this, is that they are generally aligned on
Hmm.
things and that they work in unison to the common end. But I mean, one version could be that they're somehow differentiated by the people who kind of quote unquote own their code. Uh,
Hmm.
and I don't want it to be that those people like can direct them, but maybe influence. I don't know, but that again maybe it's too complicated. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I will say, and again, I know we're talking about like it's in the real world, and but from there is this thing that is real with the nouns, the noun project of like decision making and group, you know, uh, sort of a group consciousness,
Communal, yeah, the
uh,
DAO.
and it does feel like there's a I do at least feel like that makes me want them to not necessarily be always instantly on the same page together in a way that's just like that's just how they are. We don't even need to get into it. It makes me more want to be like, yeah, there's a council of nouns and they sent me to go get your help, kind of a like
Right.
of actual in the like that their structure is almost parallel to the one of the holders in a sense. It's like that's how they know how to do things. That's is that not how everything works? Kind
Right.
of
Right. So they are basically the manifestation of a DAO.
right, exactly.
So
But
like everyone, they all get a vote,
yes, exactly.
and
They just assume that's why would you run anything else
I
any
like
other way?
that. That
This is
makes a lot of
our
sense. Yeah.
that's we were born into that. That's
Right.
very natural to us. Um,
Um, and so are they sometimes as chaotic as a DAO might be, and
I think yes, and I think that it is like the kind of thing where it's like, do you want to get like far along with a thing with this guy and this thing? That's like if everything's changed.
yeah. Right.
Uh,
So
I think that there's a,
they may never get on their quest if
the
if it's a DAO, but we're here, so perhaps they will. Um, yeah, no, I think that's interesting. So Well, I think that's something that we can put some more thought into. Like, I feel like we don't even obviously make that decision today, but I feel like that realm of it being we're close to the real world, and that these things are, we're created as NFTs. There's a doubt. I mean, whatever. We don't know how far we go. We don't need to know, but they are NFTs. They were created by someone. They exist as we understand them to exist in our reality, but then this person is encounters them in a different way, and then the specifics of all that, I think we can work out. Can they die?
My gut is to say yes.
I mean, you can. I don't know how. I'm not. I'm embarrassed with my ignorance in terms of like burning things, but you can burn NFTs, right? Like, that's something that can be done, and
Yeah, I
make
mean
the
the way
NFT.
often the way that's done is their ownership is transferred to like a null address, which
Right.
then so then there's no further, basically no ownership, and nothing. They're really more frozen than anything generally. Now some NFT
Except,
contracts have a like burn function that does something beyond that, but yeah,
well, that's really interesting. I mean, like, that's
yeah,
basically being like sent to like purgatory for
yeah.
eternity.
hmm but yeah, I mean, look, I
That'd
love
be
when they.
terrifying if you were a sentient being,
Mhm.
like that fate.
I love when they bring out the dip and Roger Rabbit. Come on, that's great.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They can sense it. Yeah. Um, that's cool. So, what are there other ways that they could be killed, do you think?
I mean, I think we want there to be a possibility an existential threat to them coming from this
Yeah.
villain, and so that whatever that is,
Right.
it's not going to be good for them. I mean, it could again be a like this is going to change our way of life, or this is going to change our. It doesn't have to be that it's like they're going to all be destroyed, but it doesn't hurt if it's that.
Yeah.
That kind of helps make this simpler in some ways. So I do think that like I think that should definitely be on the table, with what's going on with this guy and them, and again, not like necessarily this guy's plan is I'm going to do that, but more that like a consequence of that
Right.
could be this.
Yeah. I'm aware of your time, so why don't we wrap this up? The one thing I just wanted to share, the one idea that I had recently, like I think yesterday, that I thought was kind of fun, is you had mentioned, what happens if our character can like go into become a noun.
hmm
And so the thought I had was maybe that happens when, like, if they enter like a VR or AR world, like,
Yeah.
metaverse of some kind, and then their avatar puts on the noggles.
Oh, that's
They
fun. Yeah.
suddenly they suddenly kind of become a noun. So it's like
Yeah.
almost like Inception. It's like a dream within a dream kind of thing.
hmm
And then everything becomes, in their world, becomes nounish.
I like that.
Yeah. Somehow giving the glasses,
Yeah.
prominence, because obviously that's important.
hmm
Anyway, that was my
Um,
last thing I got kind of excited about the nouns and their mythology.
Great. Well, I think this was a good, albeit brief session. We'll talk offline about getting the next one in soon. And yeah, this was, I think, a good. I
Yeah.
feel like we got about half of what we wanted to do in this one done, and then let's
No,
get back together soon.
sounds good. All right. Sounds
Cool.
good. Talk to you later, man.
Bye.